Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a live at the waterhole session today on the 4th of January. Happy New Year's to everyone. Hope 2026 is a wonderful year for all our viewers and filled with many wonderful wildlife sightings. It's me, Kenneth Gamble. I'll be your guide for today's session. I hope it's an interesting session and we'll have lots of interesting sights waiting for us. We've started today here at Mantis Founders Lodge in the Eastern Cape. A whole number of rhinos wallowing and basking in the sun, looking quite pleasant. Just a reminder, the show is live and interactive, so please pass through your questions and comments. That adds a wonderful dimension to the show, and I'll do my best to answer them. Oh, there we've got a lonely zebra passing through. Rhinos don't seem to be too worried. Can also see some type of small little bird there on the water's edge. Can't see it too well. I would fathom a guess it's more than likely a caper wagtail. Riley, you'd like to know if rhinos sleep both standing up and lying down, depending on the situation. To my knowledge, they're quite happy to sleep lying down. It's not often that you see a rhino on its feet. They might be in a docile state or slightly doze off, but for rhinos, their lower center of gravity, it's quite easy for them to lie down and stand up if you compare it to an animal like a giraffe or an elephant, where it's quite a great deal of exertion for them to lie down properly and sleep, which they do, but it is a lot more challenging and it poses a health risk if they lie incorrectly, and obviously they're a bit vulnerable in that state, whereas rhinos are quite quick to get up and get on their feet, so it's not as challenging for them. Well, we're going to leave our picturesque lazy unicorns here to carry on basking. We're going to head over to Tembe. Now we've got plenty of elephants here today at Tembe. It certainly is looking also very warm and picturesque here. Quite an assortment of ellies all over the show. I also see our ever-present woolly neck storks doing their thing. Wouldn't be complete without them. Of course, also a number of swallows flitting around. I'm not going to try identify them. Good possibility of it being barn swallows in this open area, but always best to use a pair of binoculars when looking at swallows and swifts. Harper, you are asking, is poaching still decimating elephant populations today? It certainly is a big threat of elephant populations, not so much in southern Africa. Elephant poaching in southern Africa is much lower or much less of a thing. Of course, authorities and national parks will always not take chances, and if an elephant does die, they will remove the ivory or protect it. But yeah, elephant poaching is not much of a problem in southern Africa. Rhino poaching remains one of the biggest scourges, but more North and East Africa and West Africa or other parts of the African continent, elephants are certainly threatened by the ivory poaching that goes on there, and it is an ongoing struggle. On the topic, there was a question I saw from Gage asking if understanding rhinos' sleep could help better protect them at night. Rhinos are known to change their behavior quite a bit once they are starting to be poached or harassed and threatened. They in turn become quite a lot more nocturnal, etc. But nowadays trackers and the use of AI is making quite a large difference in protecting and looking after rhinos. So they use it to monitor their movements, where they're spending a lot of time stationary, stuff like this, so that they can understand a rhino's movements in its habitat and reserve or in its territory, and determine any irregular activity. Maybe the rhino's being chased off quite a bit, and that could be a sign that someone's maybe pursuing it or trying to poach it, or so yeah, the new tracking devices that are being used with the help of technology are really changing or turning the tide quite a bit and helping to protect the rhinos. And I think that is a wonderful, good thing for technology. Well, we're going to leave our happy elephants here and we're going to head over to Twin Pan. Another wonderful sight of more elephants here. You see it looks like a stump-tailed elephant at the back there. Obviously something happened to its tail when it was a bit younger. Pat, you're asking how strong is an elephant's trunk and can it uproot trees? So elephant's trunks are incredibly strong. It's made up of a number of muscles, etc. About 40,000 roughly, and they've been known to lift over 300 kilograms with their trunk, so it is amazing. But when it comes to uprooting trees, it would generally be your smaller trees or saplings, and they'll probably do this when they're feeding in the dry season, trying to get to a plant's roots, etc. I have seen myself, often you'll see smaller trees that are just completely uprooted, and I don't know if anyone else has ever tried uprooting a tree, but it takes a tremendous amount of strength. There are tools called tree poppers, etc., that use leverage to get this right, but it's one can appreciate the strength of an elephant to do that. But when it comes to bigger trees, they tend to push them over with their forehead when they push. I mean, that's eventually how they push them over. But at the same time, it's not always big trees that are just simply bulldozed. They'll more likely break branches off, strip bark, and in some situations with big bulls, they will actually push them over. Unfortunately, it can be a bit destructive, but they do play a crucial role in engineering their habitat. The animals generally benefit from it. Milo, you'd like to know why do elephants have such long pregnancies? Of course, the gestation period of an elephant is about 22 months, so this is quite long. But it's if you think about it, it's because they're growing and growing one of the largest and most complex babies in the animal kingdom. That elephant calf is filled with, well, I mean, its brain is massive, its organs are quite large, its legs, etc., all those things, so it takes time for it to develop properly, and that is the short and simple answer why the gestation period is so long. In most animals, when the babies come out quite well developed, etc., and generally in your large animals, due to their size, that's when your gestation periods will be long, because it takes time for the unborn baby to develop. Well, I'm going to leave this peaceful breeding zone that's just mowing away here and pop over to Lentor. Now, we've got a few hammerkops here. For a second I only saw the one, and then I saw the second one. I'm sure they're on the hunt here for some unfortunate frogs, possibly a fish or two. We've got two hammerkops here. I only saw the one for a second, but I'm sure they're on the hunt for some fish and some unfortunate amphibians. And we're quickly going to hop on over to Founders. Well, the lazy unicorns are on the move here. Seems like there's 4 of them at the moment in the water. It's not often that we have a rhino pool party. They tend to just lounge about, so it's nice to see them being a bit active. I see there was a comment from Sanjeev about the legendary Tusker Craig, who unfortunately passed away from natural causes yesterday, I believe it was. But that he allegedly had a twin sister named Cerise. And the reports I read is that is the assumption. I don't know if it was ever 100% confirmed. Cerise is obviously a living elephant, but yeah, I was reading an article about it yesterday, and there is a bit of uncertainty, but certainly quite sad for old Craig to have left this planet. I'm sure he fathered many elephants and passed on his wonderful genes. He was a beautiful elephant. It looks like the rhinos are quite content with just dipping their feet in the pool today. I can relate to that quite often. I'm not the biggest fan of getting completely wet. It's more about cooling down and then escaping the water. Quite a subdued pool party taking place here. I must say the rhinos are not living it up as much as we often see the elephants get into it. Nova, you're asking if white rhinos sprint short distances faster than most animals. So white rhinos can move surprisingly fast. I know they look like a barrel on 4 short legs, but they can clock up about 40 or so kilometers an hour. And of course that's faster than most people it's faster than most people expect for such a big animal. That being said, one would not be able to outrun a rhino, but they're not necessarily faster than most animals. I think it's just once again, I would relate it quite similarly to a hippo. They can move surprisingly quickly. I don't think they are going to win any speed prizes, but they can certainly get that large mass moving quickly when they need to. That also being said, rhinos don't necessarily rely on their speed as much as a defense mechanism. Obviously it helps when you need to run away or move, but their horn and their size is their defense strategy, etc., and their hearing.
My name is Amy, and behind the camera with me is Paul. And I mean, to be able to share it with all of you. Fingers crossed, and I'll make sure I wear my lucky leopard socks as well.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
Total there was 12. A few have also sadly gone extinct before this research was made known with DNA sequencing, but there are still a few distinct groups, and people are doing their best to also keep the gene pools stable, etc. Because also in the case of these two female northern white rhinos, when you're sitting with such a small population, it's very hard to turn it around from the brink, since you've got such a small gene pool to work with. So eventually you have related animals breeding with each other, which is a bit of a no-go. Well, our rhinos have calmed down a fair bit. We're gonna hop on over back to Tembe. I can imagine it is quite warm and hot here at Tembe at the moment, when you see the elephants standing as stationary as this. And they are simply taking it easy and gathering their thoughts. It does look a little bit overcast, but the way those big ears are flapping, I think it is quite warm. I see we actually have 3 woolly neck stalks there. I'm used to seeing our standard 2. It's nice to see that there's a few more in the area. Quite funny, all of these elephants are taking it very easy. I think they're all feeling the heat a bit. Everyone seems to be mainly focused on taking a dust bath or 2 here. Probably find the wet part of the cooling down has taken place, and now it's just about applying some dust and sand to help with the sun's UV rays. Whether you're asking if elephants cool their brains with the blood flowing through the veins in their ears, yeah, so the brain alongside much of the body, but they, for all intents and purposes in this example here, they're really cooling the blood flowing through their brain with their ears. Those ears are packed with many large blood vessels, and when they flap them, the blood flowing through those veins etc. loses heat to the air or dissipates in that manner, and then of course that cooler blood circulates throughout the circulatory system and helps to regulate temperature. Quite an important adaptation in the African savanna where it's quite hot most of the time, and this in turn also of course protects the brain from overheating, which is a crucial function. It's basically having a pair of giant radiators ears. Of course they can also hear incredibly well. Quite a wonderful scene here at Tembe today. It does look truly peaceful. Peter, you're asking if elephants came down to the waterhole, would they chase the rhinos away? It does happen. It's not always a given, but it does happen from time to time. Generally it will take place with maybe a young boisterous sub-adult or bull elephant that's maybe feeling a bit cheeky or brave, or with a muster bull, but generally there is peace and tolerance between the two species at a waterhole, and they may be aware of each other, but it goes both ways. I've seen footage of rhinos reacting quite aggressively to elephants approaching at a waterhole. The example in question was a female rhino with a calf, and she reacted quite aggressively towards the elephant bull. He got a fright, but of course when he gathered his thoughts he ended up chasing her off. But yeah, generally it will be a young boisterous elephant that maybe wants to cause havoc, or a muster bull, and in that case it will be a fair bit more serious. Here you'd like to know if a playful calf could slide down a muddy bank like it's on a water slide. So obviously there's have to be a bit of a steeper mud bank or sand bank on the edge of a river. I think they definitely would. I don't think they would necessarily do it repeatedly for fun, but even large adult elephants, if you ever watch them negotiating down the edge of a steep bank, they will also kind of slide down a bit or slide down on their knees to negotiate it. You can also often see it in the sand or the tracks that they leave behind. You can see these long drag marks. So even adult elephants also do it, but maybe the younger elephants might find a bit of more entertainment in it, but for the adult elephants it would definitely be much more for functionality. But it is truly amazing to see how elephants are able to negotiate challenging slopes or steep slopes. I think there's a lot of times where I was growing up thinking, oh well, an elephant definitely can't get up here or it can't get down here. And the more time I've spent watching them, the more I've realized that they're incredibly flexible and adaptive. The other day I was in the Kruger Park and I saw how they climbed up and down a very steep bank to cross the tar road. So never say never when it comes to elephants, so they'll find a way to do it. You can see a couple of these bulls are stretching around as they negotiate these mud pools or mud pans. In some cases it looks like some of them are doing yoga. But they are definitely taking a very peaceful afternoon to beat the heat before they obviously start foraging again this afternoon, and I'm sure they will forage later into the evening hours. It's not uncommon for elephants to do quite a bit of feeding at night when it's cooler. That's why some elephants are known as crop raiders. They'll do it at night under the cover of darkness. But that's for a bit of different reasons. But yeah, elephants do feed quite a bit once the sun sets. It works well for them. I must say these younger bulls in the centre are quite impressive young specimens, but that bull to the back on the right is a very well-aged decent specimen. You can see he's got quite thick ivory and his body size is also quite impressive. And he's definitely been around the block a bit in his time. But the genetics here at Tembe are very healthy. They are well known for the tusks that the bulls tend to carry in this reserve. Gage, you'd like to know if elephant empathy could teach us more about emotions in the animal world. I think empathy is a large word to to use necessarily for elephants. I don't think they necessarily experience it in the same way that humans do, or to such a deep level. We do know elephants obviously look after members of their herd and their offspring quite carefully, and do seem to take a large amount of care in interacting with each other. But at the end of the day, for me, in my opinion, I think it's a lot to do with their survival and their social structures. It makes them incredibly successful, etc. But that being said, in survival situations, another elephant cow will not necessarily completely take over the raising of another calf that has maybe been orphaned or is not her calf. Her instinct tells her to focus on her calf, etc. And there's only so much she can do. She will not necessarily bend over backwards to try help another calf survive. So one must be careful when you use the word empathy in these cases. It's not necessarily completely the same. That being said, also there's plenty of times where in some situation elephant bulls get into very serious fights, and these fights are to the death. So yeah, it's a complex thing. They certainly do appear to show certain emotions. I think maybe not on the depth of what we humans maybe know. But they still do have quite strong social bonds with one another, and we can see how they interact and sometimes share excitement when two herds come together. So it's quite a complex situation, but yeah, I think there's two different contrasts to it. Funny, some of these elephants are almost looking like statues. If it wasn't for the occasional wave of a tail, flick of a tail or ear flap, they would certainly pull off being a group of statues. It's certainly quite calm. I see the one bull there is stirring up the mud a little bit, obviously planning on throwing some mud around to cool himself off and coat his skin with. There is always something very relaxing about just sitting back and watching a few elephants go about their daily business. Over the festive season I spent a fair bit of time near waterholes just watching elephants come and drink and do their thing around the waterhole. It's also very interesting to always see how they interact, because generally they don't drink in isolation. There's always a few elephants in the area, and as one appears, many more tend to follow suit. Well, we quickly hopped over to Lentor. The jesters of the bushveld are here, getting up to some monkey business around the waterhole. I see these ones are carefully negotiating these thorny branches on the side of the hide or the waterhole. I would rather avoid thorny branches, but each to their own. Elias, I saw you had a question regarding why do bulls and must drip oily secretions and turn dangerously aggressive. Must is certainly quite an interesting and unique quality or thing for elephants. You don't see it in other species as far as I'm aware, and there's quite a confusing and unique adaptation that they have with regards to their breeding. With regards to the dripping, they drip urine from their penis, and they secrete an oily substance from their temples. It's quite a strong smelling substance. I wouldn't say it necessarily stinks, but it is a very strong and unique smell. I wouldn't call it pleasant either, but it's musty and I guess. But yeah, when a bull elephant goes into must, their body is flooded with hormones, specifically testosterone, and this is what triggers those oily secretions you see dripping from the temporal gland, on the sides of the head. And that strong smell is obviously a chemical signal which advertises to other elephants what state this elephant bull would be in. It essentially announces his strength and dominance in those situations. I have seen it myself. Over the festive season we came across a must bull elephant in a clearing, and after getting past him we came across a younger bull that had clearly picked up the scent, and you could see this younger bull was very cautious and careful, and actually after picking up the scent turned the other direction and ran off, obviously not wanting to be in the path of a highly dominant and aggressive elephant bull and must. But yeah, that hormone surge changes their behavior quite a bit. They tend to become much more confident, assertive, and less tolerant of challenges. And I think that's why they come across as so dangerously aggressive. It's not necessarily anger, it's just that they become incredibly unpredictable. Sometimes they may allow certain things, or they might look very docile, and all of a sudden they will change to a perceived challenge, etc. So it makes it incredibly difficult to deal with or handle, because you're sitting with an animal that's not very reasonable. But yeah, a very powerful surge of hormones that does change their behavior completely. In fact, some examples are younger bulls that are normally not more dominant than older bulls. Once they go into must, they have the ability and the confidence to challenge these older bulls, and these older bulls will sometimes even turn tail to avoid a fight with a younger bull in must. I see our baboons are staying quite well put for once. I hope I don't jinx that. Generally every time I say that they disappear quite rapidly, but they do look very calm and relaxed today. Enjoying the first week of January. Almost a bit like a poolside or beachside vacation here at Lentor. Zara, you're asking how loud does a baboon's barking alarm once they spot danger? It's quite loud. I'm not sure on specific decibels. I don't think it's going to damage your eardrums at all, but it is certainly very noticeable. And you will not be under any illusion that something is going on. Of course, once one of them spots danger, they all also start barking or alarming, so it's quite a cacophony of sound, and that's also kind of how you can gauge it. Maybe a cautionary bark or two might indicate they're a little unsure, but they're suspicious of something. But if you hear a lot of noise and chaos, then you can almost be guaranteed there is something taking place. Kai, you'd like to know if an alpha male could really take on a leopard to protect the group? Certainly so. I think it all depends, of course, if the leopard has the element of surprise. That's normally their secret. If they can get hold of the baboon before or make the first move, that first bite is normally directed to the neck, and they will be able to eliminate the danger. But if the male baboon is aware, from a frontal assault, I don't think it's going to go great for the leopard. It will be quite cautious. Of course, this is not to be taken lightly. It will still be quite a big fight for the baboon. And I think he will also engage quite a bit of caution. Of course, baboons being social animals, they will normally react on a united front. And this is also a fight the leopard definitely does not want to have. So normally the male will have a few, in a way you could call them allies, but other, not necessarily dominant males, but allies or supporters. They'll join in the fight with him to get rid of the threat for the baboon troop. See, something gave those young baboons a bit of a fright. I think it was the water inlet bubbling and gurgling away there. Put them on edge ever so slightly. And of course the older baboons don't seem to.
Wild Earth Travel has a green season special just for South Africans. Explore Botswana's Okavango, a remarkable mosaic of delta and savanna teeming with wildlife. Stay in elegant, luxurious tented camps deeply connected to the wilderness. Discover the Okavango on exciting game drives and tranquil boat journeys. Share stories beneath the stars, remembering what it means to safari through Africa's wild south. Wild Earth Travel. We're waiting for your call.
Even a hyena coming into the action as well now. Oh my word! She's stalking the hyena now. Leopard, hyena, lion, all together in one shot. Oh. Woo. This is action-packed.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure. Are you ready for the adventure of a lifetime? Wild Earth Travel's newsletter is your passport to a magical journey. Explore exclusive travel options featuring special offers at stunning Wild Earth locations and all hosted by your favorite presenters. Don't miss out. Head over to our website and subscribe to the Wild Earth Travel newsletter today and stay in the know on all our unforgettable adventures. Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
Our giraffes quite quickly disappeared there. See, we have the ever-present elegant Egyptian goose standing watch. It looks quite prim and proper on top of its little rock there, or sand formation. Sandbank, that's actually the word I would maybe use to describe that. These runners are definitely taking it easy for the day. Milo, you're asking if oxpeckers help both giraffes and rhinos by eating ticks. They most certainly do, not just rhinos and giraffes, but also buffalo and a few other antelopes like impala, kudus, trying to think what else. There are some animals that just won't tolerate them at all, and there are a few that do tolerate them. Wildebeest generally don't tolerate oxpeckers, they run away or gallop off. But yeah, so the oxpecker will scour and scurry around picking off ticks or other skin parasites such as fleas and lice, but ticks do make up a bulk of their diet. Of course, specifically what they're after with the ticks is the blood that they consume. So if they do come across a wound, they will sometimes open it a bit to get at the blood and the mucus, etc., or bodily fluids. And while this may sound very bad, at the same time it's also been pointed out this also in a way also stops a wound from going septic, so it is a catch-22. Of course it definitely can enlarge or slow the wound's healing, but nonetheless a very interesting mutualistic or symbiotic relationship. Some people refer to it now as parasitic, because it's thought that the oxpeckers purely benefit to the host's detriment. I still see it a bit symbiotically, due to some of the other services the oxpeckers provide. On that note, also hippos also make use of the oxpeckers' services. Nira, you were asking if both giraffes and rhinos use mud wallows for skin protection. No, only your rhinos will. It's not many. It's generally all your animals or mammals without fur or coat, or hairy coat for that matter, that will wallow in mud. So warthogs, hippos obviously will wallow in mud, but they actually spend the majority of their time in water, so it's not necessary to take a mud bath, or it's pointless. Rhinos of course wallow in mud, elephants wallow in mud. We tend to see buffaloes wallow in mud a bit, generally your older bulls, and I think it's, aside from keeping cool, but your older buffaloes start to go bald with older age. Their hair starts to fall out quite a bit, so I think it's a bit to do with that sun protection. I did see zebra and wildebeest are funny. Sometimes the males will roll around a bit in the mud. I think that's more to spread their scent, but you will often see zebras rolling around a bit in mud or dust. We're going to pop over again to Lentor, see what's going on there. Seems like the giraffe are leaving us. Oh, that's quite a nice surprise. Got a, looks like a youngish grey heron sitting in the tree here. For a second I thought he was maybe had an issue with his eye, or was maybe blind, but I see it's that nictitating membrane just covering the eye, or his eyelid essentially. I think he's actually just having a bit of a snooze, having a lazy Sunday, just dozing off peacefully in the trees. Seems like this heron is doing a bit of a balancing act, keeping his balance. There does seem to be a bit of a breeze blowing through the tree, but of course birds are well adapted for this, otherwise they would not sleep in trees. It's interesting how he's drooping his wings ever so slightly, maybe sunning himself a bit, but certainly looking very relaxed. And the reason why we say this is a grey heron is your grey heron is normally associated with water, and that is their diet. They hunt fish and frogs or amphibians, and of course, this being right by the waterhole, you can relatively safely assume that's one of the reasons why it's a grey heron. This of course is a younger or juvenile specimen, so he hasn't got his full colours, so it doesn't look necessarily like the picture perfect example. But yes, this is definitely a grey heron. I see there's also a hammerkop behind this bird, preening itself. You can now see he's thermoregulating a bit, opening his beak and essentially panting there to dissipate a bit of hot or heat from himself and hot air. You'll often see birds doing this on a hot day, just to try and deal with the heat. Quite a nice close-up sighting of this bird. We don't often see them this picturesquely. Also quite unique to see them roosting in a tree like this. One generally always sees them hiding in the shadows. Luna, you're asking if stressed birds would sometimes gula flap. Very good use of the term there. Even when not hot, yes, definitely so. I think if I think of examples, sometimes when birds have a window collision, etc., and you pick them up, you'll also see them doing that gula flap or panting in a way. I think it is also to deal with the stress. Obviously, in a stressful situation like that, the body's heat does also tend to go up. Could liken it to if we ever feel an adrenaline rush, your body feels quite warm, but you will see them panting like that in a stressful situation. Sometimes if you also see them dealing with a predator or a snake, etc., you will also see them doing that gula flap. I think it's also, but once again, it can likely be a combination of the stress and the physical exertion during the temperatures when it may be taking place. So Ronan, very interesting question from your side. You are asking if all birds gula flap, or is it just ones without sweat glands? So not all of your birds will gula flap. It's mainly used by larger birds or your species living in hot environments. Think about it, a lot of seabirds, etc. Of course, we associate the ocean side or the marine environment with water, but for all intents and purposes, it's actually essentially a desert sometimes, ecologically speaking. It gets quite hot in these regions, but sorry, I digress. But yeah, you often see that gular flapping with pelicans, cormorants, herons, as we're seeing. But also just take note that birds don't have sweat glands at all, so it's not for that reason that they do it. But it is one of the ways in which they will regulate their body temperature. Your smaller birds generally rely a bit more on panting or fluffing their feathers and seeking shade. Also, of course, you'll often see them taking a dip in a bird bath just to cool themselves down, and often for a bit of time you'll see them in the shade nearby just cooling off. It's also a great way for them to cool down. That's one of the best ways to actually attract birds to your garden before you put bird food out, is providing them with fresh and clean water. That will often go a long way in attracting them, more so than food actually would. Nova, you were asking if baby birds learn preening by watching parents closely. I think it's a bit of both. Your young birds definitely have basic instinct to preen. Obviously, they don't have hands or opposable digits like us, so they rely on their beak. But they will refine it by obviously watching their parents and how they imprint and seeing it. At first their preening is probably quite clumsy and incomplete, and much like a baby animal learning how to use its appendages. But over time they learn how to properly clean themselves, spread the oils from those oil glands, and get to those hard to reach places like on their backs, etc. So yeah, I would say in a way they're born knowing how to preen, but it takes time to learn how to do it well. And obviously it's a gradual thing as their feathers properly develop, etc. I must say this is one very relaxed grey heron, but of course being safely perched up in this Fachelia tree, he has not got much to worry about and is surely quite happy. It is quite interesting to see how asleep or unaware he seems when his eyelids are closed, but obviously just lightly resting there. He's quick to look very alert when he needs to or when he notices something. And it's the case for most animals. They're often never really in a true deep sleep, but certainly very striking with those eyes. It certainly makes him look very menacing and predatory. Herons are expert ambush hunters. I always enjoy watching them scour for food. Sorry about that. We'll quickly just hop over back to Tembe. Elephants are still very much doing the thing of bathing in the mud. Looks like this elephant at the back almost sat down in the mud. The front half of him looks dry and his back half is damp, as you can see the colour change there. It's not impossible. This fella certainly having a good dosage of mud and scratching himself with his legs at the same time. Quite an acrobatic feat. I certainly think they should add a style of yoga called elephant yoga. Of watching how they negotiate their large appendages and their size. But really getting a good covering of mud all over himself. I think that must feel fantastic in the heat. Okay, you'd like to know if orphan calves get adopted by other females in the herd. So obviously if the calf is not too young, I do think it could work. Of course it must be the herd it has come from, so related members will maybe look after or help the young elephant. But I think unfortunately if it is too young and still relying on milk, that animal will probably not make it. I was interestingly reading a book the other day discussing the translocation of elephants throughout different reserves, and they were saying how crucial it is to move family units. You cannot put different families or different calves together just because it's cows. They've actually been known to kill these other calves. So yeah, quite an intricate operation that needs to take place in those situations. But I do think in a closely related elephant family, if they are aware of it, they will maybe look after it. But I think it would need to be big enough and in a way already feeding on solid foods.
The Wild Earth Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website.
When the Mara turns green, life surges, the air hums, the earth stirs, and the wild comes alive. Here, the wonder never ends. It just changes color. Every storm, every sunrise, every sweeping vista is an expression of wild magic. Visit the Masai Mara. Experience the magic.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
Riley, you'd like to know why teenage bulls get gently pushed out to join rowdy bachelor groups. So a couple things. I'd say it's relatively gently, but it can get quite persuasive. I saw it the other day myself. If the message isn't driven home, they will be chased off. But nonetheless, what will take place, they will slowly push away further and further, and I think just out of a social aspect and being on their own, they will associate with other young bachelors or find some friends to learn from and not be alone. There's quite a change for them, going from a closely knit social group to a much lonelier existence. But I think the reason behind that is just also they obviously start to get a bit more boisterous, their hormones change, they'll start to go into must, and this isn't ideal around other smaller calves or cows. Can be dangerous, can cause problems, so that's one of the reasons, and they will be encouraged to leave. At the same time, if you look at it from a biological perspective, it ensures that a male does not stay with his family and starts to mate with related members or mothers or sisters, etc. So genetically that's very crucial, and of course it also ensures that the best genes are always passed on, not necessarily the most opportunistic genes, but that he must also compete with large dominant bulls that maybe have better genes, etc., and only the fittest survive. Nonetheless, we're going to hop on over to Tau and see what's waiting for us there. Oh, that's quite a nice dramatic sighting here in the hot midday sun at Tau. Two very peaceful elephants. It's amazing to see how much the environment has changed here at Tau. It's certainly looking very lush and green. There's almost no patches of bare sand. Of course, the beautiful yellow flowers at the back there. I'm not 100% sure those are maybe devil thorns at the back, or another form of yellow flowering plant. But I know large parts of northern South Africa have carpets of devil thorns. Very pretty mat of flowers. Of course you would not want to walk there barefoot. It's quite a painful experience. I think over the last while, Tau has certainly become one of my favourite cams, certainly in my top 5. Either to do with the birds or the numerous animals in the background. I actually wonder how our infamous crocodiles are doing. I haven't really noticed them for a while. I think they obviously blend in quite well this time of year, especially with all the vegetation, but I don't recall seeing them for quite a bit of time at the moment. You can see a few waterfowl floating by. I'm not sure if they're Egyptian geese. They look a bit different. I can't see it too well. Probably is Egyptian geese. It's a bit tough to say at such a distance. The Illies are certainly looking very peaceful over here. They seem to just be focused on drinking. It doesn't look like they've had much of a mud bath today. I must say these two bulls look relatively young, not too old in the years. They've probably spent a couple of years now on their own, but they've still definitely got some growing to do. Probably find these two associate together and find a bit of comfort in each other's presence. However, it can also be a bit misleading with the different ivory shapes. Probably somewhere in their late 20s, possibly early 30s. I'm just trying to compare a bit of the body to the tusk, etc. They might be a bit more mature than younger bulls as I first thought. But yeah, it can be deceptive when you're looking at such a distance with a camera, etc. Their temples do also look a bit more sunken in, so that can also be an indicator of maturity. So everywhere I look there seems to be a bird popping out somewhere in the grass. If it's not a cattle egret, it appears to be a white-faced whistling duck. It's always the fun of looking for animals in summer. There's a lot of places for them to hide. Quinn, you'd like to know if Madikwe's reintroduced elephants have thrived around Tau Lodge. Now, just as a disclaimer, I can't speak I can't speak out of personal experience. I have not been to Madikwe, I've been nearby it. But yeah, I would assume so, yes. As far as I know from the history, it was referred to as Operation Phoenix, when quite a lot of elephants and other animals were reintroduced as part of a large rewilding effort to degraded farmland in the area and to kickstart the natural system and the reserve again. But I would say, yeah, they do tend to flourish around Tau waterhole. You always have quite a few elephants popping in around here. But at the same time, there are a number of waterholes throughout Madikwe, so I think you will see quite flourishing elephant activity or elephant herds in a number of the waterholes, and obviously they do travel vast distances, so elephants will not necessarily just stay around one waterhole. They will cover much of a large distance. It does certainly, or elephant activity is obviously very noticeable around waterholes because they all tend to spend a bit more time in these areas drinking and feeding, so their feeding activity is a bit more noticeable in these areas. But I think as a whole, the Madikwe elephant population is certainly thriving and has grown massively since its initial introduction. Jake, you were asking what is the most elephants I've seen at a waterhole. Probably in the region of maximum about 100, I would say, roughly between 50 or 100 animals. Actually, a week ago I was in the Kruger, and there was quite a large gathering of two breeding herds that had come together at a waterhole. It was quite a pleasant sighting, but yeah, it was quite a lot of elephants. It was actually very striking to see so many in one area all interacting with each other. And of course there were a few elephant bulls that were trailing the females, so it was also interesting to see the dominance between these different bulls as they mingled between the females. But yeah, if I had to take a rough guess, I would say between 50 and 100. Probably that's my biggest gathering, and even then it's mind-blowingly quite a lot of elephants. See, we've got some beautiful impala here, also just making the most of the plentiful wet season, grazing and browsing, of course fattening up and improving their body condition. As much as the mating season is still a few months away, they will need to prepare for it. They do of course lose quite a bit of condition once they start rutting and spending the majority of their time fighting for dominance and mating rights and fighting off opponents. You can see these two are maybe practicing a little bit already and showing a bit of dominance and aggression to one another. Desmond, you'd like to know if the rhinos and warthogs would also be red like the elephants in this area. I think if they went to this specific waterhole, no, they'd probably come out a bit of a whiter, grayer colour. We can see that soil type at the edge of this waterhole, so they would take on that colour of the soil. These elephants have obviously dusted themselves in an area with a bit more redder soil or redder mud. But yeah, we can see their colours stayed consistent because they haven't taken a mud bath now. McAllister, I do agree, it is very peaceful here in Madikwe. It's quite a striking landscape, and there's just so much to look at. Whether birding or mammals are more your passion, there's certainly a lot to enjoy. Luna, you're asking if you could watch elephants mudbathe right in front or right from your lodge deck in Madikwe's dry season. You most certainly can. This waterhole has water in it throughout the year. It's obviously quite a large dam or water body, but yeah, deep in the dry season it still has water. And I must say, I think we see probably the most elephants at that time of year coming to visit. It's actually funny, in the wetter season your elephant congregations go down quite a bit as they disperse and make use of other water bodies throughout and start to graze and feed in areas that they were maybe not using as much when it was quite dry. And we have our ever-present waterbuck here. They have really been capitalizing on the waterhole in these last couple of months since the rains have started. Seen them like clockwork feeding on the fresh grazing that has come up for them. But as always, this time of year is considered the time of plenty for the herbivores. Whereas the dry season is normally quite a tough time for them and a bit of a easier time for the predators. So So it's the two sides of the cycle and the system. That being said though, generally your antelope tend to do much better in the drier years when vegetation is a bit more sparse. When it's very lush and thick, lions and leopards etc. are able to ambush their prey much more easily. It's also for that reason why we see these waterbuck hang out around here. They can see danger coming from a mile away. Anyway, we're going to leave our waterbuck now and head over to Old Donyo. We haven't been there today yet. Oh, of course, the ever popular residents of Old Donyo are giraffes. Taking a nice peaceful drink. I don't recall seeing elephants here for quite some time, but there are definitely signs that they are still around. But at the same time, we definitely have seen plenty of elephants on today's session. So no complaints from my side. Lynn, you'd like to know why we don't ever see predators at the waterholes. The short and simple answer, in my opinion, is obviously a lot of your big cats tend to sleep and rest during the day, and they do that in the shade or shade under the cover of a bush or a tree, not necessarily in the open. So unfortunately, when we do our live at the waterhole show, it's quite a hot time of day across the continent, and most of your predators are taking it very easy, whereas this is when your herbivores tend to come drink. So we'll see our elephants in big numbers and other antelopes coming down to drink, since they are not active at night, and they will at the peak of the heat go get something to drink or cool down a bit. That being said, it's not always a guarantee. Your cheetahs are sometimes a little active. I've never had the pleasure of seeing them, but I do know, for example, at Tau, they will hang around the waterhole sometimes at midday. They have been seen. Sometimes, if we're lucky, we can pick up the lions on the periphery of the waterholes. That tends to happen in the Kruger region or Tembe sometimes. But as we all know, finding cats in the bush is not, or predators for that matter, but finding them is quite challenging. I think once at, I'm trying to remember the camera's name now, at Kapama we had a hyena come for a midday bathing session, so that was quite nice. And I do remember one other time when I was just watching a leopard brazenly just walk past the camera and disappeared before anyone could actually react or get onto it. Well, our giraffes have disappeared and there's not much going on here, so we're going to head over to Lentore. Sounds like the start of a corny joke, a terrapin and a hamakupu sitting on a log together, but I'll have to think of a punchline for that one. You can see a few fire finches hopping down at the back there. It's always quite nice about Lentore, the way we can see these smaller birds. They use those branches as a safe approach to the water. That was funny, the hamakupu really slipped a little bit there on the log, but regained his footing. It is interesting to see how the hammerkop has slight webbing between its toes, not by any means sufficient for it to swim, or neither would you see them swimming around like a duck, but clearly an example of their adaptation to their aquatic feeding lifestyle. And I think they probably use it a bit more for stirring up the water while they search for prey when they wade around. Ooh, something big came in there, scared all the little birds off. I do think it was probably the other hammerkop. There appears to be a pair around here. As I thought, it was definitely a hammerkop that scared off the little seed eaters. It seems quite energetic as it moves around looking for some prey. I remember growing up we had a fish pond in our garden, and I was quite excited when we got the pet fish, or the pet goldfish, but it was short-lived as a hammerkop moved into the area and quickly got rid of the fish for us. It is amazing how adaptive they are. They do very well in urban environments in Africa. But now it's quite clear that there's 3 birds around here. I was maybe under the impression it was a dominant pair. Sometimes there will be an older chick that hangs around and will act as a bit of a helper for raising. But generally it is just one pair that raises their chicks. Leo, you'd like to know if these hammerkops have a mating or courtship ritual. You'll often see them mounting one another. It's not necessarily for breeding, it's referred to as false mounting, but it can be the male standing on the female or the female standing on the male. These displays are generally more social than for mating, but of course at some point they will mate. But they are monogamous, and yeah, as a pair they'll work on building a large nest together, and then at some point the female will lay her eggs in there and they will raise their chicks. But I would say the most ritualistic, or their courtship ritual, is probably this false mounting in a way, which is not necessarily actually courtship, might be more for social bonding, or but it is a bit confusing. I don't know why the roles are reversed when it comes to doing that, so it also says to me it's not necessarily a dominance thing.
name is Maxine Gaines. Best part of the job, gosh, I just love everything about guiding. I love being able to observe animal behavior and animals behaving naturally. So for me, that's by far the best part of the job. And so what we do here at Wild Earth is develop those connections with the people that are viewing, and maybe just light a little spark that says, you know what, I want to be involved in protecting this ecosystem.
Join our expert guides at dawn for a live, immersive safari as the bush comes to life.
Found ourselves a chameleon, and look how he's changed color.
Every sunrise brings new discoveries.
Pound for pound, a leopard is one of the strongest cats around.
Ask questions, share your thoughts, and connect with nature live and in real time.
Great excitement, great happiness.
Start your day with adventure.
Okay, you're asking, why do rhinos choose water edges for naps during the hottest safari days, or hottest part of the day? So I think you'll find it's maybe, I'm not sure what specifically the temperature is in the Eastern Cape at the moment. It might be a little cooler, hence why they're maybe basking in the sun a bit. But you know, generally if it's quite hot, they'll be in the shade underneath a tree, or of course quite comfortably in the mud. But that's also why we see them dozing off next to the water's edge. Having that mud nearby, that moister ground also tends to be a bit cooler. But they will obviously move as it suits them. If it gets a bit hot, they will quickly find a nice tree to lie underneath. They often actually look like a rock when they're lying underneath a tree in the shade like that. Paul, you'd like to know if they can lie on their back. You will see them from time to time maybe roll a bit onto their back when they're wallowing, but generally more on their side, or as we see on their sides. That's how they comfortably lie. It's easier for them to get up like that. If they lie completely down on their legs, it's quite challenging for them to get up, and it actually puts a lot of strain on their lungs and heart, so it can actually be a bit dangerous for them. You'll often see with dehorning or relocation activities of rhinos, once one is darted, the ground team will rush in to push it over onto its side, that it's not lying down with its legs underneath its chest. Certainly striking quite a dramatic pose with its leg out like that. Almost looks like she's rocking herself a bit. Curious giraffe bull coming in for a sip of water. I think they're definitely trying to decide where to squeeze in for a drink of water. I do think the rhinos put them a little on edge. Not that I would expect much aggression from the rhinos. I don't think they'll be hostile, unnecessarily aggressive towards them, but I think the giraffes are cautious all the same. As we near the end of the show, sorry. Thanks to everyone for joining in. Hope it was a pleasant one. It was certainly quite a peaceful one. Saw a few interesting things, but nonetheless, I think it was quite nice and relaxing. Everything just seems very alive and beautiful in the bush at the moment. Of course, once again, a happy 2026 to everyone, and I hope the year is filled with many blessings and it goes well for everyone. Enjoy this afternoon's drive, and I hope there's a few more exciting things. I know there was some very good sightings with Cedric this morning.